They called an emergency session. The Galactic Council's circular chamber echoed with voices of over 30 species, each more certain than the last that humanity would be a minor threat at worst. They had the numbers. They had the technology. What they didn't have was caution. The emissary stood alone in the center, tall, gaunt, with eyes dimmed by horrors he would not speak of in full. His voice trembled at first, not from fear of the council, but from knowing they wouldn't listen. They never did. I bring this message not as a diplomat, but as the last survivor of an expedition that trespassed Earth's skies, he began. A few counselors chuckled. Primitive Earth, they thought. The emissary's voice grew hard. You are planning an invasion, he said. I've seen the projections. You think their resources justify the risk. I am here to tell you that there is no acceptable risk. Do not provoke them. Do not set foot on their soil. Do not even orbit their moon. Because if you do, if even one drone crosses into their space, they will never stop coming for you. Not in a year. Not in a century. The chamber remained quiet, uneasy. The emissary's species was known for its discipline, not melodrama. I watched them tear through our reconnaissance team, he continued. No energy weapons. No advanced shielding. They used steel. Bullets. Fire. Their soldiers died, yes. And then they adapted. And then they hunted. They didn't retreat. They didn't negotiate. They made examples of us. Not by broadcasting threats, but by vanishing our colonies, one by one, in absolute silence. Entire moons where we once thrived, reduced to sterile rocks with nothing left but carbon shadows. You call them primitive. I call them patient. A Shurok official stood. Your fear is irrational. Humanity is fractured, disorganized, and technologically behind by 5 galactic cycles. We will overwhelm them in a single operation. The emissary didn't blink. You won't. Because you won't understand the war you've started until it is far too late. You mistake disunity for weakness. You mistake delayed retaliation for mercy. You mistake silence for absence. They are not fractured. They are waiting. Another voice chimed in, this time from a strategist who had modeled over 2,000 successful invasion simulations. Our data suggests minimal resistance. They have no off-world presence, no fleet, no coordinated planetary shield. We possess orbital superiority. The odds are. You don't need simulations, the emissary snapped. You need memory. 70 years ago, the Shi'Tar tried to take Antarctica. One ship. One landing. Nothing was ever found again, not of the Shi'Tar, not of the ship, not even a thermal signature. Do you know how the Shi'Tar explained it? Weather anomaly. There was a pause. A few officials exchanged glances. Most had never even heard of that incident. They erase, the emissary whispered. Not for vengeance. For certainty. They erase until no one even remembers there was once an enemy. The council speaker raised a clawed hand. This is hearsay and fearmongering. Earth is rich in metals, water, genetic stock. Our colonies need expansion. We vote tonight. No minor species will dictate policy. The emissary bowed his head. Then you've chosen extinction. He turned to leave but paused at the door. If you do this, record everything. Not for strategy. For history. Because centuries from now, when someone finds the ruins of your empires, they will ask what happened here. Let your last message be honest. And then he was gone. The vote passed. 27 in favor. 4 against. 1 abstained. The council authorized a joint expeditionary force, drawing from 3 fleets. They gave it a name, Operation Cleanse. Some called it bold. Others whispered it was overdue. They launched within a month. Encrypted messages were sent. Human satellites were disabled. Atmospheric scans showed no meaningful defense systems. Orbital insertion began smoothly. Probes descended. Drones deployed. The planet didn't respond. Not at first. Then, power grids shifted in pattern. A heat bloom appeared in a region the Council's maps had labeled inactive. Earth's ground-based telescopes pivoted, not toward the stars but toward them. And from every continent, a single phrase was broadcast in perfect, unaccented galactic standard. "We heard your vote." For the first time in decades, the Council realized they had made a mistake. But it was already too late to undo it. The invasion began at 0400 UTC. 3 fleets entered low orbit and initiated tactical descent protocols. Within 90 seconds, communications across Earth's military and civilian networks were jammed. Probes began surface scans. Energy signatures were minimal. Cities slept unaware. The Council called it a clean sweep in progress. But before the first drone could land, Earth's sky lit up. The First Fleet lost orbital cohesion as its flagship abruptly lost navigation. Its systems didn't fail. They were rewritten mid-flight. Coordinates shifted. Internal displays blinked a looping message: "We are awake." Within seconds, 3 cruisers collided and disintegrated above the Pacific. Debris rained into the ocean. From every continent, signals began to rise, encrypted, synchronized, and fast. Too fast. The invaders hadn't expected response time under 15 minutes. Earth's atmosphere shouldn't have allowed it. Then, kinetic railguns emerged from mountain ridges once thought geological. They weren't. One cruiser lost both engines to a ground-based projectile before its shields could engage. It crashed into the Andes. No survivors. Council Command attempted to override the jamming protocols. They failed. Human countersystems had learned their encryption within minutes and were now flooding the fleet with false command. One scout vessel began firing on its own transport. Another drifted silently, overridden completely. Its internal temperature dropped to near absolute zero. No fire, no explosion. Just void. Within an hour, Earth's nations, once fractured by language, ideology, and economy, responded in flawless unison. Subterranean silos launched missiles not at the fleet, but into the atmosphere, releasing targeted aerosol agent. No human would be harmed, but the airborne compounds were genetically engineered to react to known alien bioproteins. The first troops that landed suffocated on contact. They had trained for human resistance, bullets, bombs, insurgents, not tailored microbes keyed to their cellular structure. From underground bunkers, mechanized units rolled out, not massive tanks but lean, silent drones equipped with sonic disruptors. These weapons didn't shatter armor. They shattered coordination. The invaders found themselves disoriented, unable to distinguish ally from foe. In the chaos, humans advanced, not in numbers but with precision. They didn't swarm. They selected. In Berlin, an alien command post was overrun by 6 human operatives who never appeared on infrared. In Tokyo, a council medship was hijacked and crashed into its own resupply carrier. In Siberia, a remote base self-destructed just as alien forces approached, destroying classified tech, denying recovery. Human casualties were not absent. But they didn't break morale. They multiplied resolve. For every city struck, retaliation followed not in rage, but with mathematical efficiency. Entire formations disappeared in areas with no satellite coverage. When Council analysts reviewed the data, they found gaps. Not errors, gaps. Whole minutes of feed were gone, cleanly erased. No signal disruption. Just absence. Like nothing had ever been there. Attempts to land reinforcements failed. Earth's gravitational pattern subtly shifted. Council ships struggled to stabilize. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. Earth's core had been manipulated. Not permanently, but enough to distort magnetism. And no alien fleet had been prepared for magnetic pulse warfare deployed from orbit. Electronics shorted. Shields failed. Engines misfired. One flagship drifted helplessly before being silently enveloped by a black mass. It wasn't a weapon. It was a cloud of microdrones, each no larger than a grain of sand, programmed with a single directive: dismantle. By the third day, the Council realized there had never been a chance for victory. Humanity had let them land. Let them feel confident. Let them broadcast their declarations. All while studying every pattern, every protocol, every assumption. Earth had not reacted out of fear. It had waited, watched, and when the moment came, responded with calculated brutality. Council fleets attempted withdrawal. But Earth's satellites, once thought primitive, began pursuing. Not shooting. Following. Locking trajectories. Tracking patterns. Dozens of ships managed to escape orbit, only to find themselves intercepted days later by autonomous pods that emerged from asteroid belt. Pods that bore no insignia, no message, only the unmistakable silence of human design. One escapee transmitted a final message before vanishing. We thought them fractured. They are singular. We thought them slow. They are deliberate. We thought them behind. We were already beneath them. On Earth, there were no parades. No announcements. Just cleanup. Recovery. Preparation. They knew this wasn't the end. The Council wouldn't forget, but neither would humans. The war had started not with fire, but with certainty. Humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were responding to a decision made far away, by beings who believed numbers would outweigh memory. They were wrong. The war changed tempo on the 12th day. Humanity no longer defended. They advanced. Without formal declaration, without negotiation, Earth began to move beyond its borders. What remained of the Council fleets in orbit were either scrapped or vanished mid-transit. Surveillance logs caught final broadcasts filled with static and incomplete coordinates, then silent. The shift was surgical. Human vessels, small, nearly invisible to standard scans, pierced the peripheries of Council territory. They didn't destroy cities. They removed infrastructure. Relay hubs, fuel depots, orbital stabilizers, gone. Planets blinked offline without a single casualty, but the message was clear. Vulnerability would not be tolerated. Within weeks, Earth's Black Operations divisions reactivated dormant programs. One by one, old satellite arrays hidden in Lagrange points powered up, relaying deep space transmissions on encrypted bands the Council didn't recognize. These weren't backup systems. They were launch signals. Humanity had been building silently, 4 decades, behind the illusion of stagnation. Reverse-engineered propulsion units launched from hidden oceanic platforms. Entire fleets, unannounced, entered interstellar space. Their paths were erratic, non-linear, and untraceable. What they carried was not mass destruction. It was judgment. The Council's central databank on Thessar Prime was the first target. No explosions. No infiltration. The planet's core systems froze at once. Entire knowledge archives turned to static. Artificial weather cycles destabilized. Local systems shorted permanently. Thessar Prime went dark in 90 seconds. 2 weeks later, a memorial station orbiting Jeruin reported a strange pattern of signal echoes before disappearing. Later investigation found nothing left but a dense cluster of compacted metal. The station had been crushed into itself. Experts debated if such force was even possible without a gravity well. Humanity didn't confirm or deny involvement. Council officials began to resign. Fear, once projected outward, returned home. Species that had voted for war publicly distanced themselves from the decision. But records showed the vote. And Earth had copies. Every name, every ambassador, every system that cast yes, flagged, marked, pursued. Diplomatic attempts were ignored. Any transmission from Council-linked sources was filtered and discarded. Embassies on Earth were shuttered. No messages were returned. Silence, now, was humanity's only communication. A new fleet appeared near the outer rings of the Hadros sector. Its structure was unlike anything in Council databases. Angular, matte, non-reflective. It made no demands, sent no signals. The local patrol moved to intercept. Contact was lost in 4 minutes. Recovery efforts found no wreckage, only fine black ash suspended in a perfect sphere where the patrol had once been. Humanity didn't destroy everything. They selected. Planets that had abstained or voted against the invasion remained untouched. But they were monitored. Every planetary orbit hosted an unmarked satellite. No visible weaponry, no movement, just presence. Yet every world knew what they were capable of. One ambassador tried to plead Earth's case before the Council. They are acting without diplomacy, without law. A transmission interrupted mid-session. A human voice. Flat, unaccented. So did you. The chamber went silent. That system went dark the next morning. The pattern was consistent. Humanity gave no warning. They struck with precision, disappeared, and observed the outcome. When retaliation was attempted, it failed before it began. Defense grids shut down from within. Council weapons locked, then fired upon their own asset. Intelligence networks fragmented. Earth hadn't hacked the systems. They had rewritten them years ago. The Council realized, too late, that the invasion had never been unanticipated. Earth hadn't been blindsided. They had been waiting. Every diplomatic interaction, every satellite allowed near Earth's orbit, every intercepted transmission, they had collected it, studied it, mirrored it. And when the vote was cast, they executed the contingency. Resistance collapsed from within. Council worlds began dismantling their own weapon systems, afraid they might be turned against them. Planetary leaders vanished. Some by resignation, some without trace. A growing faction within the Council pleaded for surrender. But there was no one to surrender to. Humanity offered no channel, no leader, no negotiation. Their fleets were silent. Their operations invisible. Yet every time the Council moved, Earth responded. Immediately, decisively, without emotion. The idea of peace became irrelevant. Fear replaced governance. Decisions shifted from policy to survival. Emergency protocols became permanent law. Travel corridors were locked. Civilian traffic halted. What was once a galactic power now existed in suspended anxiety. And still, Earth did not speak. They didn't boast, threaten, or demand. They simply continued, system by system, removing the capacity for retaliation from anyone who had once believed they were untouchable. The invasion had ended. But the retribution had only just begun. 13 major worlds fell silent within 60 days. Not destroyed, disabled. Entire populations intact, but paralyzed by infrastructural collapse. Artificial suns flickered. Food replication halted. Orbital stations froze mid-sequence. No demands were issued. No formal claims made. Humanity didn't conquer. They disabled. The Council could no longer meet in one place. The central chamber on Yetrax burned during what was supposed to be a closed emergency session. Investigators found no breach. No explosive residue. Just intense, contained thermal dissociation. Of the 37 officials present, none survived. Surveillance logs ceased precisely 2 seconds before ignition. External systems registered a burst of heat, then static. Across the galactic core, alliances fractured. Species who once voted unanimously splintered. Some went into hiding. Others denounced their governments entirely. Panic grew among leadership as they realized they were not targeted randomly, but in the order of their recorded vote. Archives once public disappeared from Council network. Entire voting records were wiped in desperate attempts to erase culpability. It didn't matter. Earth had already copied every file. Worlds once part of the Council began closing borders, not to protect from humans, but to escape association. Supply lines failed. Economies crashed. Former allies now accused each other of dragging them into a war they never understood. Trust, once the Council's currency, collapsed. On Dvara, a heavily fortified communications hub, senior strategists held one final coordination attempt. They sent 12 encrypted messages to human-flagged systems, offering surrender. All messages returned the same reply, identically worded. Acknowledged. You will be processed accordingly. Within 3 days, Dvara's gravity stabilizer reversed polarity. The planet's rotation slowed unnaturally, rendering its surface uninhabitable. There were no follow-up responses. Council scientists finally admitted what their governments refused to say aloud. Earth's capabilities surpassed prediction models. Their data indicated not just superior tactics but long-term preparation. Decades of silent observation, systemic redundancy, and predictive adaptation. Earth hadn't reacted to war. It had already planned for it. A new term emerged within Council files. Predetermined response matrix, referring to the theory that Earth's actions followed a path mapped years in advance. Every strike, every disappearance, every communication blackout aligned with old data leaks the Council had dismissed as irrelevant. The few species that had abstained from the original invasion vote were left untouched. But they weren't spared from fear. On each abstaining world, humans left a single object, a disc-shaped monolith. No interface, no signal, just presence. On approach, they emitted a low hum matched to the planet's magnetic field. No action followed, yet no one dared remove them. Inside the remnants of Council governance, desperation set in. A delegation of 3 species, none of which had voted for war, attempted to reopen contact. They launched a neutral vessel, unarmed, marked with ancient peace glyphs. It disappeared 10 minutes after leaving orbit. Hours later, the same vessel returned, empty, drifting, its systems wiped, its interior clean. Not a warning. A dismissal. Those who had once demanded Earth's submission now whispered of divine retribution. Cults formed, worshipping the humans not as conquerors but as enforcers of cosmic balance. The myth spread rapidly, that Earth had ascended beyond civilization into something else, an execution algorithm disguised as a species. The few surviving Council worlds began dismantling their own military stockpiles. Some turned weapons inward, detonating arsenals just to avoid them falling into human hands. Others initiated full planetary lockdowns, denying entry even to their own kind. The Council had no center. No directive. Just fragments of once powerful empires choosing isolation over visibility. Meanwhile, Earth spoke nothing into the void. No transmissions. No diplomats. Just action. Silence had become the universal language of authority. The absence of sound now carried more weight than any broadcast. The species who had first warned the Council, the emissaries' people, were never targeted. Their systems remained untouched. Not as allies, but as observers. They understood something the Council never had, that Earth's fury was not blind. It was calculated. Memory, not rage, drove its campaign. For the few remaining leaders still clinging to power, one realization settled in. This was no longer a war. It was a sequence. Actions produced consequences. Votes triggered result. The rules were fixed, and no amount of pleading would change them. The Council collapsed not from assault, but from accountability. Earth didn't destroy civilizations. It let them witness themselves undone. Centuries passed. No formal empire rose from Earth, yet no one mistook its silence for absence. Human fleets, rarely seen and never named, moved between systems with quiet intent. Where they appeared, disputes ended. Where they lingered, order re-emerged, without legislation, without dialogue. Their presence alone carried more authority than any treaty. Former Council territories adapted. Not by choice but necessity. Power structures reformed around one principle: avoid drawing attention. Histories were rewritten. Records of the invasion were edited, redacted, in some cases erased entirely. Children grew up learning nothing of the vote, only that there were things never to be provoked. Entire species maintained peace not through cooperation, but through collective memory of consequence. In the outer systems, stories turned to myth. Generations removed from the conflict spoke of the humans as ghosts, unseen enforcers of a forgotten law. A ship vanishes? A relay fails? A government falls overnight? Earth remembered, they'd say. Few had evidence. None needed it. Those who tried to explore Earth's systems never returned. Drones sent toward its borders either lost signal or returned corrupted. Not damaged intact, but altered. Logs overwritten with noise. Coordinates shuffled. Engines still functional, yet rerouted back to origin. It was as if Earth didn't reject intrusion, it rendered it irrelevant. The species who once thrived on dominance now taught their young restraint. Former warlords became conservationists. Isolation became policy. Militaries became relics. The very existence of human retaliation had inverted the arc of galactic civilization. One world, long ago spared, finally dared to archive the entire sequence. The emissary's warning, the vote, the invasion, the collapse, everything. It was not distributed, only kept in a sealed vault, powered by independent energy, shielded from broadcast. A precaution. Not to honor Earth, but to understand it. The record ended with a phrase from the emissary's final address. They do not strike first, but if they must, they never stop until history corrects itself. Humanity itself said nothing. It didn't colonize. It didn't negotiate. It moved. Occasionally a world would discover a monolith where once none existed. No message. No change. Just presence. And over time, that became the clearest message of all. The closer one operated to Earth's path, the more precise one's behavior became. Galactic trade stabilized under this silent regime. Piracy collapsed. Extortion vanished. Systems once lawless adopted internal order. Not from morality. From pattern recognition. Those who behaved survived. Those who tested thresholds became anomalies. Footnotes in censored record. Within this structure, humanity expanded inward. The soul system transformed, but no signal escaped it. Observers speculated that Earth had built something deeper than governance, an automated memory, a logic network seeded with centuries of input, now operating independently of its creators. Some called it an algorithm. Others called it inevitability. Few called it human anymore. On the 1000th year since the vote, a signal pulsed from the edge of council space. It carried no message, no data. Just a timestamp and a signature, origin, Earth. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't a recall. It was a reminder. Within hours, academic institutions across the galaxy began issuing internal alert. Governments reinforced old protocols. Navigation systems rechecked boundary parameters. And in quiet corners of space, the few who still remembered whispered one phrase: the audit begins. The signal never repeated. No ships followed. No threats appeared. But shifts occurred nonetheless. Corporations halted mergers that had raised ethical concerns. Mining operations pulled back from planets marked by ancient monolith. Intelligence divisions shut down surveillance programs they had insisted were secure. All without enforcement. The message had already been absorbed. No one asked for forgiveness. No one offered explanation. Earth had never demanded either. Its justice didn't depend on morality. It followed pattern, history, and inevitability. It waited, not to strike, but to confirm that its presence remained understood. And so, the galaxy turned. Systems evolved, societies progressed, but always within unseen lines. The age of expansion had ended. What remained was the age of precision. A universe governed by consequence, shaped not by conquest, but by a single act of memory too great to ignore. Earth never spoke again. It didn't have to. The silence was permanent. The warning eternal.